Who's actually going to get the most out of a 32-inch 4K OLED gaming monitor, and who should just keep scrolling past the price tag? If you're trying to decide whether the ASUS ROG Swift 32-inch OLED is a realistic upgrade for your daily rig, or if you'd be better off waiting for a cheaper panel, that's exactly the question I'm tackling today. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When a monitor promises 240 Hz, 0.03 milliseconds response, and true black OLED pixels, the first thing that pops into most people's heads is, will it actually feel that smooth in a real-world game, or is it just a marketing hype machine? The reality is that the experience you get hinges on a few practical things: how your PC handles 4K at ultra-high frame rates, how the OLED panel behaves during long sessions, and whether the extra features like the Neo proximity sensor actually make life easier. I spent the past couple of weeks swapping this thing into my own setup and also talked to a few friends who run both competitive shooters and color-critical work, so I can share what mattered beyond the headline specs. Let's start with the use case that most people will care about: fast-paced gaming. The 240 Hz refresh rate combined with a 0.03 milliseconds gray-to-gray response is, on paper, perfect for anything from Apex Legends to Call of Duty. In practice, the monitor does deliver a visibly smoother image when you're actually hitting 200 plus FPS in a 4K title. The OLED panel eliminates motion blur the way a traditional LCD with a high refresh rate can't, because each pixel is turning on and off almost instantly. When I paired it with an RTX 4090 that could consistently push 180,200 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K with DLSS, the gameplay felt buttery, and the contrast between a dark alley and a bright neon sign was striking, something you just don't get on a typical VA LCD. However, there's a hidden trade-off. OLEDs, even with the BlackShield film that claims 2.5 better scratch resistance, are still susceptible to burn-in if you leave static UI elements on the screen for too long. The ROG Swift includes ASUS OLED Care Pro, which dims and shifts pixels when it detects static content, and the Neo proximity sensor does a clever job of turning the monitor off when you walk away. In my day-to-day workflow editing videos, scrolling through spreadsheets, or watching movies, the sensor actually turned the screen off after about 30 seconds of inactivity, which saved a little power and gave me peace of mind about longevity. Still, if you're the type who leaves a HUD up for hours on end, you'll want to be diligent about using those built-in tools. Another angle to consider is the HDR performance. The monitor meets VISA DisplayHDR 500 True Black and covers 99.5% of the DCI-P3 gamut, so HDR content does look punchy, but it's not a true HDR 1000 experience. When I streamed a 4K HDR movie from Netflix, the highlights were impressive: black's truly black, white's bright without blooming, but the peak luminance capped around 500 nits, which means very bright outdoor scenes didn't explode like they would on a premium TV. For most gamers, that's fine, because the increased contrast makes dark areas more discernible, but for a dedicated home theater setup you might feel shortchanged. Now let's talk connectivity. The monitor ships with a DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20 cable that can carry the full 4K 240 Hz signal without compression, plus a handful of HDMI 2.1 ports. In my build, I used the DP 2.1 for the PC and HDMI for the Xbox Series X, and swapping between them was seamless thanks to the built-in Display Widget Center. That software auto-updates firmware, so you never have to hunt for a driver, and it even lets you export custom color profiles, handy if you switch between gaming and color-critical photo editing. The downside? The hub takes up a decent chunk of the back of the monitor, and the included cable is a bit stiff, so you may need a longer, more flexible extension if your desk layout is tight. Pricing is the elephant in the room. This isn't a budget monitor. The OLED panel, 240 Hz panel, and the extra sensor tech push the cost well into the high 3-4-figure range. For a casual gamer who plays a few titles a week and mostly sits at 1080p or 1440p, the money could be better spent on a high-refresh LCD that still offers 144 Hz and good color accuracy. But if you already have a high-end GPU and you care about both competitive performance and a truly immersive visual experience, the ROG Swift gives you a blend that's hard to match elsewhere. The 3-year warranty also adds a safety net, especially given the concerns around OLED wear. So who should hit the add to cart button? If you're a competitive shooter or high-refresh esports player who already runs 4K at high frame rates, the monitor's ultra-low response and high refresh rate will translate directly into a smoother, more responsive feel. If you also dabble in HDR video creation or streaming, the DCI-P3 coverage and true black performance give your content a professional